Hey everyone, my name is John. I'm a software engineer with about 10 years of experience. I run Latterly.io where I teach people to code. And today I'm reacting to Namanh Kapur, how to get ahead of 99% of software engineers. Haven't watched it, fresh takes. We're gonna dive right in. Let's get it.
To get ahead of 99% of software engineers, you have to act like the top 1%, and I've worked with them. I sat next to Kent Beck at Gusto. I've been
To get ahead of 99% of software engineers, you have to act like the top 1%. Logical to me. So far, so good. It's logicking.
yelled at by the first engineer at JetBrains, and my now good friend is a Circle CI legend. And today, I'm gonna spill all their secrets, broken into 8 key areas, starting
All their secrets. Seems a little bit sus. It's the video hook. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I like the 8 key areas. We're gonna keep it organized. Let me take a sneak peek at the description. We love it. He's got the timestamps. Ooh, they're already looking good. Okay, let me not get ahead of myself.
starting with secret number 1, thrive in ambiguity. Most software engineers cannot function without direction. They sit around waiting for projects or even worse, individual tasks. It's one thing to get a meaty problem with a bunch of unknowns.
I'm gonna cut him off. This is already true. This is already true. And if you're familiar with how performance review is done in the industry, being able to take fuzzy problems or ambiguous criteria and turn it into a concrete plan that we have confidence is going to work, and then take that plan and actually implement it, these are the steps of a senior engineer, of a very senior engineer. So this won't be the top 1% in the sense of the smartest. This would be the top 1% in the sense of a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. Frankly, you can have an average IQ and get to this level through hard work and by being intentional about exposing yourself to different kinds of projects. So this is a very system design related skill set. Also experience with customers. So customers are famous for, sometimes they don't know what they want, or they might know what they want and they might not be able to express it very well. And from the software engineer point of view, it looks ambiguous or fuzzy. You need to be able to hear that and turn it into precise technical plan
that you have to go figure out. But it's even worse to sit around until you're spoon-fed an Asana or Jira ticket spelling out exactly what you need to do. In fact, this is a pretty good way to approximate an engineer's level. Usually, the fewer the instructions on the task, the more experienced, higher leveled, and better paid the developer.
Yep.
Companies want go-getters. They want people who can take vague directions like
he's totally right, and he references level.fyi there. That was very big tech, Facebook, Google, you saw the pictures. And this is how they do their system design interviews, and it's heavily weighted for calibration for level setting. I will say, if you are someone who hasn't programmed before and you're trying to get into tech, that is a different kind of 99%. That is a different kind of 1%. So you don't need to do all this just to break into tech. This will be extremely important after you land that software engineering role and you want to up level to like senior principal staff, a very high level. In terms of getting your foot in the door, if you're approaching this video from that mindset, that is not actually important for ambiguity. And it's not really a knock on you. It's not a knock against you if you need a well-defined requirement or Jira ticket at the junior level. So this frame of 99% versus 1% is almost like a level framing, rather than, given that you're at the junior level, how do you maximize your chances of landing the job? This is not required in that regard. If you can get there, great. But what he's talking about is something that usually takes, 5+ years of experience to get. It's actually not required at the junior level.
Like our tests are flaky, or our builds take too long, or our AWS build is too...
Tests flaky, builds take too long. Again, these are the things that more experienced engineers are going to be dealing with. At the junior level, if you're even writing tests, that's already putting you in the top 20%.
Too high. They're not told how to solve the problem, just what the problem is. It's on them to figure out the intricacies and make it happen. So how do you thrive in ambiguity? Well, the first step is to just accept it. Don't shy away from responsibility because you don't have all the answers.
this is something that you can practice even at the junior level. A lot of us will get into analysis paralysis. Don't fall for that. Take advantage of the uncertainty, because uncertainty, once you get on the other side of it, is experience. Think about this from a statistical point of view. You make an effective statistical model by exploiting the error term. You learn from the error term, and that's what improves your model. This is true for humans too. One tech influencer that I listened to recently said they wish they knew earlier in their career that in order to get ahead, they would have to double their rate of failure. Why would you have to double your rate of failure? Because failure is a means of learning. So even as a junior, especially as a junior, a lot of things are going to appear uncertain to you. Just dive in. Learning by doing, right? Try to identify projects that are low risk, because that way you can fail and it's just a learning experience and it's no harm done. So do side projects. It doesn't matter if you fail in your GitHub repository. Don't take on a bunch of freelancing clients and learn by failing with those clients, right? You want to have some level of expertise before you attach financial considerations. Anything that might end up burning a bridge, right? So if you're trying to grow your social network, one thing that you might do is you might DM someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, take a look at my portfolio. If there's anything I can do better, let me know. If they're going to say an improvement and you promise to do it, don't burn that bridge. That is not the place that you want to take your risk. Do the safe thing there. Just do what they said. Place your gambles on your own things. Make it a fun thing. Just make up a project. Right now it's almost getting into the fall season. Pumpkin spice lattes and all that. One thing I did one year for a portfolio piece was to make a CSS and HTML turkey. It was just a fun thing. I'll show you this in my vanilla micro projects. Vanilla flat white. I call this vanilla flat white. This is a collection of micro projects. Flat white because it's just HTML and CSS. So the stolen turkey. How do I get to the deployed form of this? Let me go back to the deployed form. Oh no, party foul. I need to link it right here. See the live site here. Okay, cool. It's in the README. That's pretty good. It would be even better if it were right there. So now it's right there. So here's like just a little dinky portfolio thing. And it was just fun. And if I had screwed this up and if it didn't work out, that would have been okay. See, the idea here was, can I make a turkey? And can I click it? Can it make a gobble sound? And can I upload an MP3 to GitHub? That was actually the really tricky piece that I wanted to investigate, is whether I could upload the MP3, which is a binary file, to GitHub. Take a listen.
Gobble, gobble.
So that's my son saying gobble, gobble. And then you can muck around with this. But the interesting thing was oh, it already worked. Now they're white. Now they're gray. And so you can change the colors of the tips of the turkey. This is just a lightweight fun thing. This is a place where you can take some risk, right? Limit the scope. You're not too invested. If it fails, it's not a big deal. Not something with financial or promises to a third party attached. All right, let's get back to the video.
The truth is, no one does. I used to think that I was a terrible engineer because I couldn't finish the entire project by myself and some god-tier staff engineer could, but that's simply not the case. Leadership doesn't care how a project gets done. They just care that it's done on time without introducing too much tech debt. And the result is successful.
Actually, leadership is very often willing to take on tech debt. It's often the engineers that need to fight and advocate against taking on tech debt. Leadership does want to make sure it gets done, ideally on time, with minimal risk and maximal results. Leadership will even be here's a pro tip. If you want to negotiate with leadership will actually be willing to listen to you if you say, hey, this is actually going to take 2 weeks longer than we thought it would. That's not as scary as it sounds. Some people will freak out and think that leadership is going to fire them or something. They won't. Here's what you need to tell them. The project is going to take 2 weeks longer than we thought it would, but we're using that time to raise the quality bar. We can be extremely confident there will be no bugs introduced. We could ship it out faster, but we're going to have to cut on quality. It'll increase risk. So we propose to spend those extra 2 weeks so that we can do this the right way. We can do this the safe way. That might sound like minimizing tech debt, but cutting risk is not the same as minimizing tech debt. So cutting risk is going to be testing more. You can add automated tests or do manual tests, either one. Slow rolling is an example where you do a 1% release and then you take up the traffic until it takes all 100%. You can see how that release pattern would take longer, but it's lower risk. But it's not actually reducing tech debt, is it? It's actually increasing tech debt because you've introduced this abstraction, which is the percentage rollout, that once it hits 100, you're going to remove that. So you're actually adding tech debt to cut risk. And this happens fairly often. Another way that you can introduce tech debt is by duplicating code. But sometimes duplicating code is the safe thing to do. So sometimes reducing risk might involve creating tech debt. So what you want to communicate to leadership is not the word tech debt. They actually don't care that much about the term tech debt. You want to make it clear that you're going to have less risk, better management, better rollback planning, more logging, safe confidence. These are the things that they care about. If you can make them confident that the customer is going to benefit and therefore the company will benefit, they're very happy with that, even if it means taking on tech debt.
10x engineers spend a lot of time thinking and
No comment on the 10x engineer piece. Let's just keep going.
designing before ever touching a line of code. They talk to a lot of people and try to really understand what the problem is. And then they
It is true that talk to people, which I think is one of the points that Namanh here is making. Take advantage of talking to people. How do we talk to people? Do your due diligence and your homework first. Don't be a mooch. Don't receive your Jira ticket or your task and immediately ping someone else. Don't do that. You want to do your due diligence. Various teams have time boxing norms. One norm might be a 2-hour norm. One norm might be a 20-minute norm. And one norm might be a business day norm, or even a 2 business day norm. Which of these you apply depends on your team. So when you're onboarding, these are one of the things that you can ask. At onboarding time, you sort of get a get out of jail free card where you can ask all the questions you want, even without doing due diligence because you're new, and that's fine. After your onboarding period, it's going to be expected that you do your due diligence and that you have some sort of knowledge and that you sort of check Confluence, check whatever knowledge stores are standard at your company, even do a Google search before you bug someone whose time is valuable, one of the more senior engineers. So you ask about these time boxing norms based on your team and also based on the urgency of the issue. So if you're on call, if there's a production outage, you're going to want to apply the 5, 10, 20 minute sort of quickly reaching out and quickly escalating. I think in most cases for a non-on-call standard user story, the 2-hour thing is great. I think the 2-hour thing is great. The 1 to 2 business day thing, you're going to want to apply that in the following case. When the person you would reach out to is especially senior, like principal or staff. Because they're especially senior, their time is especially valuable. And these sorts of people in many companies will be a second level escalation. So that first you should escalate to the mid-level or junior, or like mid-level or senior developers. And if they don't know, you will second order escalate to the principal or staff. That is when you might want to really do some extra due diligence before you bug them, right? Because interrupting anyone, whether they're staff or not, creates sort of an inefficiency. You think about like task switching, right? But that task switching has an even higher cost when you're interrupting someone who's supposed to be working on something really important. So when do you bother them should basically correlate to how valuable is their time and how much time have you spent preparing. If you spent it, so that's one case. When the person you're going to escalate to is staff level or higher, or maybe a director, maybe they're on the managing side. With your manager, you can feel free to ping them after the 2-hour mark if you're lost. Probably check with the developer first, but if the developers don't know and you need to get management involved, ping your immediate manager. You wouldn't want to do that for a presentation to like a director or a VP. You want to get your ducks in a row for that conversation, right? So when the person is very senior, that's one case. The other case is when it's part of the ticket itself is research work. If someone gives you a research ticket and you only spend a couple hours doing research and then you ask someone else, it kind of feels like you're making them do your work. Does that make sense? We often call these spikes. Sometimes the whole point of a spike is for you to spend 1 or 2 or even more business days full time doing research. Like the research is the substance of the task. An output might be like a white paper. You might write up a document as an output. In those cases, don't bug someone else. There is still a use case to bug someone else during a spike, and that is the following case. They want to be involved. If they want to be involved. Or if they are an unexpected stakeholder. So if I'm researching my task, let's say I need to build a search engine for my app, and I realize at my company, there's this other team that built a search engine for a different app. Then it's a natural extension of my research to consult with them. I'm not asking them to do my work. My work is consulting with them. So that's a totally fine reason to loop them in. So those are some reasons you definitely want to make sure that you're talking to other people. We haven't even gotten to the job search, right? Thinking about the job search, it is critical to leverage a social network and to be talking to humans. You should not upload a resume and expect that to get you a job. Follow up with a relevant individual at the company to which you applied. Could be an engineering manager, another software engineer, or a technical recruiter. Talk to a human. Get their feedback, get their advice, get their tips, how to navigate the interview process, and hopefully they'll bump you up in the interview line. Also at interview time, talk to the person. Talk to the person. Don't go into silent mode. When you get your lead code question, don't turn into a turtle. Be open about your communication.
Define a success criteria. Because remember, if the problem itself is vague, then what it means to be successful is murky too. For example, let's say leadership comes to us and says their AWS bill is too high. Well, we want to decrease it, obviously, but by how much? Anyone can make up a number and say we want it to go down by 50% per month, but is that a reasonable goal? Is it attainable? And more importantly, does it make sense? Maybe it's possible, but not at the cost of engineering time and effort. Everything has a price, and the best engineers understand trade-offs. Once all the planning is done, the pros and the cons, the best engineers architect a robust system to cover all the important cases.
What's up says, are you streaming right now? Yes, I am. So you can go over to YouTube, link is in the bio, and see the full screen. Thanks for the likes. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Namanh here is making an excellent point. Basically, the definition of success is negotiable. This is a really good thing that you can negotiate on. And be careful that you're not being overly ambitious. We talk about little rocks and big rocks in project planning. Make sure that you are getting the support and capacity to take care of your rock, and try to get a few small rocks under your belt before you go proposing large rocks. If you're an individual contributor working on someone else, a project that is proposed by someone else, maybe that's a big rock, maybe that's fine. Helping achieve that is not the same as you proposing and executing and leading a big rock. It's actually much harder. And there is a tendency to get your hand slapped a little harder if you make a big proposal and you don't deliver. So better to under-promise, over-deliver than the reciprocal, right? When it comes to percentages, we do like to have measurable definitions of success at planning time. 50% would be huge. That would be awesome. as he says, is that realistic? There is a lower boundary to goals. If I set my goal too low, my work might not be prioritized, or I might succeed and people might not care. It's better to be successful at a project that didn't impress people than it is to fail at a project that everyone cared about. One of the things that you can do here is look for scientific shelling points, 1, 5, and 10%. So 50% is probably going to be too ambitious unless you happen to have a cheat code. And in some cases there are. In some cases there's a very easy way to change n squared complexity runtime to a O of n or even constant runtime, and you could save a bunch of compute cost or a bunch of memory or whatever. Those are often pretty rare. So often what you end up needing to do is negotiate the definition of a win. Don't go too ambitious, don't go under ambitious, but think about those. If you're thinking, what is the least I can do that still counts as important? Science has your back here. We've been dealing with this question for a long time. Look at the 1, 5, and 10% thresholds. In some places in science and medicine, you can even go 0.0001 or something like that, right? So if you have a case where that would still be considered useful in software engineering, maybe you set your goal there. That is pretty rare to say that I'm going to make a 0.01% change in some entity under change. Almost no one cares in programming generally. But there are exceptions. So 0.01, yeah, I'm really struggling to think of a case where that would impress anybody. Even like an ML model. Maybe in an ML model, if you have like a state-of-the-art ML model, improving it by 0.01% within a quarter or a month might be seen as valuable. Go for those 1, 5, or 10% for your first few small rocks. Start to get a feel of the systems that you're working with, and you can go up from there if reasonable, or you can even cruise with that. If you can do 5% quarter over quarter, that's a good cruising speed. If you're improving systems 5% quarter over quarter, that's a pretty good cruising speed.
No coding yet. All this is done on design docs and tech specs, which they then send out for feedback. They get all the relevant parties to comment, and once they have...
He's 100% right. Design docs and tech specs, again, what he's talking about is separating, you're already employed as a software engineer and you want to get to that senior level and you want to be a decision maker in the guild, we say. So like you're one of the leading Python thinkers, or you're one of the leading architects, or one of the leading DevOps, or skill-wise trade thinkers. So skill leadership, these are horizontals in companies, in the organizational structure of a company. These are called horizontals or guilds. So he's talking about being a guild leader. You don't need to be a guild leader to land your first programming job. If you're saying how to get ahead of 99% of software engineers, and what you're hearing is how to be in the top 1% of job applicants at the junior level, that's not what he's talking about. You can still adopt some of what he's saying. Think about your GitHub portfolio. By the way, you should have a GitHub portfolio. Just by having one, you're going to be in the top half of applicants already. And by having a good one, you can easily get into the top quarter. One of the elements of a good portfolio is that the README is written out. It's legible. Let's look back over here. So over here, my project is deployed. That's an element of a good program. Here's my portfolio. By the way, this thing is open source. If you want to go to vandevere.github.io/not John's Linktree. Like this website, check out the source code here. You can click it. You can use this. Here's another element of a useful project is something that other people will use. Okay? So let's look at these three elements of a good project. It's deployed and accessible. It's linked over here. Other people actually care about it and will use it. And it has a well-defined README. Well-defined does not need to mean long. It just needs to be clear what it's for and how to use it. How to contribute to it is also a good tip. Pro tip, ChatGPT is excellent at helping you write a README. You can just go over to ChatGPT and say, here's what my application does, help me format this into a README, and it will spit out a formatted README for you. You can also look for README boilerplate. So I actually contributed to this one. It looks like it's the top Google result. The fraction README boilerplate. I have pull requests that have been accepted on this. And it's a good one. You see, it's not incredibly long, but you get what you need. Installation, how to install it, how to use it, and contributing guidelines. Those are the main things you're going to want here. A summary line and a table of contents, those are nice to have as well. So this works. As someone who has contributed to this README boilerplate, I would encourage you, and let's look at the commits just to double check. This is the one. Yep, there's my name. Multiple times contributed to it. As someone who has contributed to one of the top SEO placed README boilerplates on the internet, I would still encourage you to check out using ChatGPT first, actually, to help you construct your README. Let's resume.
Adequate buy-in, only then do they start coding, usually with a team of engineers. Secret number 2, find problems. The best software engineers are independent. They can go find the biggest impact problems, convince leadership that they need to.
You don't need to find the biggest impact problems. You want to find the best ROI problems. Impact per time and effort. Impact over cost. Benefit over cost. This is called ROI, return on investment. So the benefit would be the impact, and the cost is going to be time and effort, which we also called LOE. LOE for level of effort. Think about your own job search. You don't need to make the biggest impact piece of software. Do you know how hard that would be? The biggest impact piece of software is going to be extremely difficult and complicated to implement. What you want is substantial impact in a reasonable time frame with minimal risk. So you also want to do risk adjusted on all of this. So in investing terms, you want the risk adjusted ROI, which is not the same as the biggest impact project. Let's keep going.
To be solved and then actually go solve them. Finding the highest yield problems in the first place is the true mark of a rockstar engineer, and they accomplish this by spending a little bit of time every day just exploring the code base, having casual one-on-ones with team members, and poking around in the metrics. Their goal is to understand pain points.
There's another element here. So we talked about risk-adjusted ROI. Namanh was right to call out having Namanh was right to call out having conversations with your team members. Even more relevant than that, when it comes to getting your project prioritized, is having conversations with those people who pick the projects. I've worked on various teams at companies you've heard of, including Capital One and Amazon. Sometimes my peers and my fellow engineers, would believe or even know that certain technical changes would have pretty good impact. Those impacts are going to be weighted by our preferences. So the engineers are going to highly value developer experience improvements. I got news for you. Some of the managers are going to weigh customer value over developer experience. Sometimes they're wrong, sometimes they're not wrong. It doesn't matter. What matters is they're the ones who get to pick the projects. So you need to have conversations with those people and explore their preference set so that you can identify projects that have a high perceived value to those decision makers. The perceived value is what's going to get your project prioritized. It's what's going to get you improved in calibration. The perceived value over the real value. And this is a little bit tragic, but it's the real world. I've had cases where engineers executed projects with high real value and they were perceived to have low value. And I've even seen people get pipped for spending time on things that leadership thought was not important. And leadership was wrong, but they didn't manage perception very well. The engineer under Pip did not manage perception well. And this is why communication and perception management and managing up is so critical as a career skill. To get your foot in the door, you kind of need to worry about it, but it's different. To get your foot in the door, you just need to present your portfolio in a positive light that makes it seem important. Just make a positive case for your portfolio, for your projects in your portfolio, and for your personal online brand. Present yourself well. Make sure your LinkedIn looks good. Don't put an anime picture on your LinkedIn. The title line. This is another place where you can control perception. Some individuals who are trying to land a coding job will say, I'm seeking a role as a junior engineer. Please don't say that. If you have a GitHub that has 2 or 3 or more software engineering projects on it, you already are a programmer. You already program. What do programmers do? Programmers are people that write programs. Programs are just like groups of code. If you have programs, you are a programmer. So instead of saying on your LinkedIn that you're seeking you're a ambitious individual seeking a junior level programming role or entry level, don't say that. Say software engineer. Just say it. Just own it. That's a way that you can manage perception. You're going to end up looking better to technical recruiters that are reaching out. Technical recruiters don't have all of these ability to read through the lines, right? Be direct with a technical recruiter. I'm a programmer. I'm a software engineer. I'm a front-end developer. I'm a full stack developer. I'm a back-end developer. Just be clear. You're helping them and you're helping yourself, because by identifying this way, you're going to correctly value yourself. I don't want you to be overconfident. I don't want you to overvalue yourself. But if you program, if you know how to program, if you have full stack applications on your GitHub and you wrote those and you didn't just like copy somebody, then you are a full stack developer. You're a software engineer. You're a programmer. You're not just an ambitious person seeking an entry level role. You are a programmer. You are a software engineer. So make sure that you communicate your proper value so that you don't get lowballed or ignored. Because if you say the other thing, if you devalue yourself, why would the recruiter be interested in you? You're not even a programmer, right? They're trying to hire a programmer. So tell them you're a programmer, because that's what you are.
These can be technical bottlenecks or product shortcomings or even just things that give developers the ick. A word I learned quite recently. And then they surface these issues to the PMs or general leadership, and they're often met with the same question. Okay, but why? You have to convince people that the thing you're trying to solve is 1, an actual problem, and 2, big enough of a pain point that we should prioritize. This isn't easy to do because engineering projects usually take months and are very costly because...
He's 100% right when you are already hired as a programmer and you're trying to get a project prioritized. If you're trying to land your first job as a programmer, you don't need to convince anyone to prioritize it. You can just do it. That's one of the nice things about being a programmer on your own, working on side projects. It's often easier to convince someone that something you did is valuable rather than trying to convince them that something you are going to do is valuable. So just do it. And you can also do this as an employed programmer. If you're careful, you can do what we call side of desk work. Make sure that you're delivering your committed goals. That's your 9 to 5, that's table stakes, that's baseline. And then if you want to over deliver, identify some side projects that you may be personally passionate about. And you can just deliver those. You can just build them and you can tell your manager, hey, in my free time, I built this other thing. If you want to use it, great. If you don't want to use it, great. Here's some traps with that. One of the trap is if you try to force your thing on your manager and they don't want it, you're going to irritate them. Or if you try to force your thing on your peers, If you're passionate about it, do it because it's fun, do it for the experience and for the possibility that it might be valued. But don't force it on people. That's going to create like a negative magnet repulsion, an ick. Here's another thing that you might do instead is ask the team ahead of time. Hey, if I had some extra time, what would be some things that I should be working on? And be intentional about the way you communicate this, because one answer you might get back is, well, you can help me on my project, right? Or just taking more Jira tickets. What you want to look for is a gap. You want to explore for a gap where you can bring a new solution. One-on-ones, you should be having one-on-ones with your manager. This is a great place to bring that up. If your company practices happy hours or on-sites, or if you are physically getting lunch together or breakfast together, these are all great locations to informally chat with your peers and leadership to see what they would want you to do if there was some free time. You can also ask to be looped into project planning and look for the line. So the line is, we only have so much time. Here are the most valuable projects. We're going to go for ROI. So we rank them in their return on investment, and then we draw a line when we're out of time, and those items below the line don't make it. But if you had spare time for side of desk work, you might take a couple of those below the line projects and deliver them anyway. And if you pick the right one, you could make certain people very happy. That is, people who wanted to get those things prioritized and they lost the marketing campaign. If you're able to deliver it anyway, you can make them super happy. This could turn into great performance review material. Also, if you are getting the idea from someone else, you already have buy-in. This is super powerful. Think about your pull requests. You need approvals on those pull requests, right? If I go off into turtle mode and do something just because I thought it was fun, and now I'm asking the team to approve it, it might work, but it will definitely be harder to convince 2 people or 3 people or 4 people than to convince N-1 if I already had support, or maybe I can find a project that already had a support from multiple people. That's a real winner. If you can find something that already has support from multiple people, yet somehow it was not prioritized, and you have the spare time and expertise to take care of it, that is a potentially very high valuable side of desk work item.
Engineering time is expensive. So how do you get good on both these fronts? Finding and convincing. Well, for discoverability, you just have to put in the time. You need to read code and review PRs and venture into parts of the system that are foreign to you. Onboarding yourself and reading documentation, you'll have a fresh perspective. It's like that air freshener commercial where the person can't tell that their apartment stinks because they're there all day. Well, software is very similar. The more you interact with the system, the more biased you become. So a new perspective can make all the difference. As for convincing people and rallying them towards your mission, well, that just takes practice. You have to be persuasive, and in this day and age, data is king. So when you say something...
By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, thank you for being here. Throw a like on the video. Head over to my YouTube channel and subscribe. My name is John. I teach people to code. I run Latterly.io. This is a blind reaction to Namanh Kapur. I've never talked to this person before. I don't even think I've seen any of their videos before. You can see I have this list, will react to. So this is, I see an interesting title, maybe I watch 5 seconds and I go, ooh, pause. I'm gonna wanna react to this. I throw it on this playlist. The playlist I will put in the link description, in the YouTube video description. Please leave a comment if you have another video that you would like me to react to. I'd love to see it. It's pretty fun for me. And there will be a different playlist reacted to, which is the ones I've already done. So check out the description. There will be Latterly.io where you can go to code. My socials will be there, this video, playlist, and the other.
If something is slow, tell me by how much. And if something costs too much, then go find out what similar sized teams are paying and then prove to me that our spend is multiple times that. The more data you have in writing, the better your case will be. And of course, having heavyweight engineers backing you can only help your cause. Secret number 3, become a subject matter expert. The top 1% of software engineers are the go-to people for certain aspects of a company.
He's 100% right. Earlier, I talked about being a guild leader, and I described what a horizontal structure in a matrix organization company is. Subject matter expertise is the same thing, basically, is being a guild leader. Let me mention that you do not need to be employed to be a subject matter expert. You can become a subject matter expert by creating social media content around your learning journey. Your expertise can be in the learning experience. Imagine this. You're hired onto the company and you've just learned skill X. You may have a more up-to-date understanding of X compared to other people. In addition, if you've been creating an online brand, an online presence, you're making blog articles or TikToks or tweets around subject X, you may be considered a subject matter expert before you even walk in the door. This has happened to me. This has happened to me. In addition, when you're onboarding, you're this person who has expertise for learning and creating content. You can go through those onboarding materials that you're presented with and find ways to improve them. That will be valued by your team. You can be an onboarding subject matter expert. You can be a subject matter expert in so many things. You don't need to be a subject matter expert only in a programming language. You can be a subject matter expert in niches. And in fact, this is often the easy thing to do because it's low competition. If there's already someone at the company who's like a genius at, Kotlin, right? You probably should learn some Kotlin if you're on a Kotlin project, but you might not want to compete with that person. What you might want to do is look for gaps. A reading group is one thing that I've seen done to great avail. This guy is a Kotlin genius, but maybe there's a gap on the team related to cultural things. Maybe the culture is a bit rough, a little bit workaholic-y, right? Or architectural concerns. Maybe the team is stuck in a monolith architecture and there's no one who really knows how to break it out into a microservice architecture. Maybe the team is new to AWS, whatever. You can find some gaps. One of the ways that you can establish yourself as a thought leader, even if you're not an expert in the situation, is by playing the role of a facilitator. For example, facilitating a reading group. Just by showing that you are on top and leading learning, later you will be found to be the subject matter expert in many of those cases. So be open about the pain points, and that way you can also encourage others on the company to be open about pain points the whole company is having. Then, even by being vocal and leading on the solution, you can build a reputation as a subject matter expert, even if you don't have the solution, just because you are the one who is closest to it ostensibly because you're intentionally studying it. Does that make sense? If the idea is, even if you don't know the right answer, if you're the only one studying the problem, you're already a subject matter expert. And you don't want to study that problem in a cave. You want to study that problem publicly, learn in public, and that will help build your public reputation as a subject matter expert.
They're responsible for entire product lines and teams of engineers. And if something goes wrong, well, the buck stops with them. But how do you build so much trust? Well, if you paid attention to the first two secrets, then you're well on your way. By learning how to first find and then break down ambiguous problems into bite-sized chunks so you can make forward progress, you inevitably spend a lot of time in one area. And the deeper you go, the more complexities you unlock and the better you understand that system. And at some point, you've just spent more hours.
I just like the motivational background music. And was that jQuery? Did he just show? Hold on.
Oh, the more complexities you unlock.
I love the motivational music in the jQuery. Okay, let's keep going.
And the better you understand that system. And at some point, you've just spent more hours than any other person at the company. And so you know the most about that one thing. The goods, the bads, and the ugly.
Yep.
Hopefully you don't hate the area you've now learned so much about, because then you'd have to start from scratch somewhere else. The more you get invited to meetings and roped into discussions whenever you're...
By the way, it's totally okay if you dig into a subject and you realize that you hate it. He's right, you'll need to start over because no one wants a negative Nelly. You're not going to lead by being critical. That's actually a huge pitfall. If you are a senior engineer and you're trying to up level from senior to principal or staff, you don't get that promotion by being super negative and critical. You need to provide positive solutions that get from A to B. Now, providing solutions with intelligence and with confidence includes an analysis of alternatives. And you can be critical on some alternatives. That's good. It's good to have a critical mindset. Have a critical and positive mindset. Do not have a critical mindset to the neglect of a positive mindset. A skeptical mindset is great. Have a skeptical mindset and a growth mindset. Both. They can work together. This is like the yin and the yang, right? Do not have a skeptical mindset to the neglect of a positive growth mindset, or you'll just be saying that won't work, that won't work. And at some point you're going to be wrong because the company's going to do something. If the company crashes, great. I hope you enjoy being right. But if the company lives, you're the person who said nothing would work, and yet here we are, it's working. So you're the negative Nelly. You're not looking like the next generation leader. You want to be positive. You want to identify positive solutions. You may need to, if you find that the system you investigated or the technology that you investigated is not high quality, it's not ideal, that's actually a good thing because this is building to your knowledge base. You will need to find a positive one, so you will need to start from scratch, as Namanh says. Find the next one. But it's really a good thing to investigate a few alternative technologies rather than sort of diving into one, saying how great this is, and you haven't even looked at the others. That is suspicious. So when I teach people to code, I often encourage them to learn React. Learning React alone may get you a junior level job, but if you ever want to get to senior, you're going to need to be able to compare and contrast alternatives. React versus Angular versus Svelte. Why are we picking this one? In that case, it's totally fine and even expected to have maybe one that is your least favorite. This is like a common interview question as well. Like, tell me about a time that you had to deal with X, Y, or Z that you kind of didn't like. So don't feel bad. If you dig into a technology and you decide that it's not ideal, make sure you know why. Don't just go complaining for no reason. But if you have concrete reasons that A is preferred to B, that's actually a positive sign. By the way, understanding multiple similar technologies in a solution space will uncover problems with the initial solution. If I dive into technology 1 and I never look at an alternative, I might say, hey, this is great, this solves the problem. And I may be unaware of the flaws in technology 1 because I never contrasted it with an alternative that varies along the feature set. Does that make sense? So don't feel bad if you dig into a technology and if you don't like it. Hey, my first back-end programming language was PHP. And my third was Visual Basic. And I don't really like either of those. So sometimes you need to go through a few to find the best one and to understand why. And be able to communicate why the best one is the best one.
System is mentioned, the more people start associating you with that area. And if you're not already that person, well then start faking it till you make it. If something breaks, step in and volunteer to help investigate and fix it. If someone asks a question, instead of pointing them in the right direction, go figure out what the answer is and tell them. Don't find...
But it's not better than that.
Okay, but I'm doing a video.
But I'm trying to look for my iPad.
It's not in here. I don't want a blanket, honey. Can you go sit with your mom? Close the door, please. Thank you. I love you. Whoa, hey.
Hey, I'll place it.
Close it. Close it more gentle than that.
Hey, I'll close it.
Thank you.
I want to be next to you.
Thank you.
How will you close
Find the right person for the job, become the right person for the job. Get in the weeds and find the answer. Top engineers don't wait to become experts. They just act like experts and then one day they become them.
You don't need to fake it. So top experts don't act like experts, they just become them. How do they do that? Often side projects. So you just start doing the thing that you think might work. And if it does work, now you're an expert because you just made the thing. And if it doesn't work, you educate yourself because you know why it doesn't work. So that's not faking it. That's like really learning. That's like learning by doing and engaging in over execution beyond your 9 to 5 table stakes, doing things that you're passionate about. Who would even want to do that? Who is going to go contribute to open source? People that are motivated. So just by showing that you're motivated to go above and beyond the minimum, you already are a top level engineer. I don't know if that'll get you to the 1%, but it'll get you above. It'll make you a top level engineer. So it'll get you above the 50% mark, probably over the 25% mark. If you are taking care of your 9 to 5 and also regularly committing to open source both.
All this takes time, and the top 1% of engineers know how to be productive. One tool that stands out is Magical.
What percent of engineers are senior? I don't know if I should be going to Reddit. Oh, this is talking about like old individuals. That's not what I meant to look for. How do I ask this question? Job level distribution of engineers. Oh, this is something called a distribution engineer. You know what? Let's go to the Stack Overflow survey if this doesn't work out. This is not helpful. Stack Overflow developer survey. I should have thought of that earlier. So we can do years of experience. That's not going to directly map on to whether they are senior or not, but it should give us a rough idea. So you can potentially be a senior here. I don't know. This is like a rough correlation, isn't it? How to be the top 1% of engineers. Live a long time. Yeah, so this is like the top half of employed engineers are likely to be senior. That sounds correct to me. Probably about half of employed engineers are senior level or higher. And then this would be sort of entry level, and then this is like a mixed level. Oh, are these the levels? Senior executive, developer, engineer. I don't see the word senior anywhere. Senior. Salary by developer type. Yeah, I don't see them really splitting out the job level, do they? Senior level. I don't know. Maybe half of engineers are at the senior level or higher. That's going off a rough correlation by years of experience, not by actual level.
A completely free Chrome extension used by over 500,000 people. A lot of you reach out to me with questions, so I've created a calendar link where you can grab some time to chat about whatever's on your mind. Since I get a lot of emails with Magical, I can respond with the click of a button. I've set up a template with placeholders so I can personalize each message, and then all it takes is -cal30 and I'm good to go.
Use it.
I also use it when recruiting. When hitting up people for coffee
this?
chats, I
There's
use
not-
Magical on LinkedIn. You can add a bunch of placeholders, everything from first name to company to so much more. So download Magical today with my special link in the description. Once
Absolutely.
again, it's 100% free. Now let's get back to some more tips.
100%
Secret number
free,
4,
y'all.
be customer obsessed. If you forget who you're building for, then you're not valuable at all. The best engineers are customer obsessed and leave their ego at the door. Just because you think something is cool and technically challenging doesn't mean we should go build it. You're trying to solve a real problem for real people. And though
By the way, who is your customer? You might think at Amazon, the customer is the person shopping on the website, right? You might think at Walmart, the customer is the person in the grocery line checking out and giving their credit card to the cashier. In a sense, you'd be right. In a sense, you'd be wrong. Here's how you would be wrong. Organizations often consider other teams to be their customer. So within a software engineering organization, there will be many teams. Often, the leaders of organizational sub-bodies consider each other to be customers. So what's an example of this? The back-end team might consider the front-end team to be their customer because the front-end team needs to use those APIs, the REST interface, the microservices. So the front-end team is going to make a request, and by virtue of making a request, they're kind of like the customer. What's another example? You might have an enterprise team that's taking care of certain platforms. Maybe you have a logging platform. Maybe you're using Splunk. So you might have a Splunk management team or like an infrastructure team. Anyone who uses Splunk at your company could then be considered a customer of that team. And in some organizations, there's a pay-per-use model. So that if my team uses lots of the Splunk data, and therefore we are responsible for a lot of the company sending money to Splunk, we might have to pass through and we might have to actually put out of our budget for that. And then your team who doesn't, it's like a new app and you haven't implemented Splunk logging yet, you might not have to budget for that. Different companies do this different ways. There might be a threshold where like if you're under the threshold, you kind of get it for free or whatever. That is a different idea of a customer. So you, the engineer, who is your customer? The answer is your customer is whoever your manager and your skip level want it to be. Okay? You're not going to put yourself in a good, let's say I'm working at Walmart. If you can appeal, right? How you use your communication strategy, it's going to depend on your relationship with those around you. If you have good rapport and if people are open to your ideas, maybe you do want to suggest a way to take care of that end user, the person in the checkout line, or the end user on the website. You'll need to feel out those who you're appealing to and understand their perceptions so that you know how hard to push on what you're advocating. Some teams like that. And so maybe I'm on the back-end team, but I'm still suggesting suggesting a change that'll improve the end user experience on the front end of the website. Maybe there's something that I can do to speed up the API, and that will improve, like the person is on the Walmart website and it'll improve their checkout experience and the company will make some money. Even though you're on the back end and you're helping an end user who their touch point is on the front end, your leadership might still be friendly to that. Or they might not. So you need to work with them. And I'll just encourage you that working with your managers is going to be in your career interest. You might even ask them what they would do if they had time, because your director doesn't have time to code, right? And your director might not even have the technical skills to code. They might have been away from the code for too long, or new to the company, or they have a high level view, but they don't know the low level functions to tweak and how to tweak them. So you just ask them, if you had extra time, what would be something you would like to see changed? And then you'll have pre-buy-in with your director. That's a recipe to knock a project out of the park in terms of getting it prioritized. I mean, you still need to implement it. So that's a whole other ballgame, right?
99% of engineers understand this. They don't live it or breathe it. They think it's the product or the user experience team to understand the customer and figure out what we should build. But it's not. The best engineers are product minded. And this doesn't mean they're building a consumer app. Everything is a product. Even the gnarliest infra team or the backend developer experience team, they also have a customer. It just happens to be a technical person. While most engineers get their project done and then move on, the top 1% of engineers continue collecting feedback. They check in from time to time and understand how their customers are liking the product. Then they suggest improvements and go on.
This is a big fact. Get feedback from your customers, even if they're technical customers. So even if you're a software engineer and you're the back-end team providing to the front-end team, have some informal conversations and build some relationships with those people on the front end. There are going to be a lot of ways that this can benefit you. You might hear about open positions, right? If you want to move, or maybe they want to move, and you can provide an open position to them. And so you're helping each other on sort of an interpersonal level with your career development. And that can help you in the long run. If you do that with a bunch of people, then in the future, it might result in you getting a raise or a promo or a position at a different company, whatever. So that's one way. You'll just have enhanced awareness. You can be aware of, so my director will be talking with other directors around the company. And how do I get a complete picture of the conversations they are having? Here's how I don't do it. Just ask my director. They may be a great person, but we all have our biases. If you want to have that complete picture, you can have like coffee sessions with all the directors if you're cool. I mean, if you can find a way to convince them to do that. But often another effective strategy is to form a box using those other engineers at your level, hearing about what's going on in their vertical. And now you can understand, and I can say, oh, those engineers over there, their director is wanting this, their director is wanting this, my director is wanting this, and now I can have a much more nuanced prioritization discussion. Does that make sense? If it didn't make sense, just consider this. Your director wants to look smart to their peers as well. That's the point.
Prioritize them. They realize that you can always do better, and delighting customers is the best way to make more money, which means more recognition, and then that means better pay. Secret number 5, don't over-engineer. Ideally, remembering that you're building products for a real person should stop you from over-engineering, but it doesn't always. As a computer science enthusiast and a fellow software engineer, I love when my projects are hard and complex. I just want to solve the most complex problems, so just leave me alone. But the truth is, we only have so much time and resources, and we can't build everything. And I remember going down the rabbit hole of trying to make something super abstract or over-engineering a system so it can scale to like hundreds of millions of users, when really all I should be doing is building a simple form for a web page. Build for what you need now. And that doesn't mean be dumb and purposely make your life harder in the future, but don't plan months or years in advance. There's a lot of power in just...
Don't plan months or years in advance. You might want to, though. Don't over-engineer, great advice, but don't under-engineer. Some future proofing is useful, and you'll have awareness about products, things that you're working on, projects and products. Look at where I froze it. This poor guy, I froze it on a bad frame. Okay, that's a better frame. You may know at planning time, there's no way we're going to get that done this quarter. It just won't fit. And so you may be attached to a multi-quarter project. I got news for you. If you're attached to a multi-quarter project, you do want to architect months in advance. Maybe not years in advance, maybe 1 year in advance. And being able to right size over time is an advanced skill set that will put you in the top 1% of engineers. Here is a pro tip about how to do that. Create a short-term, long-term split. Work backwards from your next deadline. So if we're at quarterly planning, what can I do in 3 months? Let's get a realistic solution to the problem in 3 months. It may be hacky. Be honest about the weaknesses of this to your decision makers. Then come up with a longer term fix. And now it is up to the group whether to go immediately to the long term, to implement the short term and stay there. Maybe that's good enough permanently. Or if they want to do the short term now and the long term later. You see, you have 3 options there. You may have a preference, depending on the case. Feel free to advocate for whatever you prefer. Yeah, advocate for whatever you prefer. But the short-term, long-term split is a pro move here, basically. There's something called the iron triangle. Even in the short term, you may have multiple options. Iron triangle programming. This thing. Expensive, fast, or high quality. Expensive, fast, or high quality. Sorry, cheap, fast, or high quality. These are things that we like in technologies. We want it to be fast and cheap and high in quality. In practice, you often get to pick two in the short run. One of the ways you can overcome the triangle is the short-term, long-term split, where you can pick two of them in the short run, and then in the long run, you can iteratively solve on the third. So a way that you might do this is you might spend a bunch of money up front to basically brute force a problem so that you can have a high-quality user experience and implement it quickly. And so there I'm selecting high quality. Let me switch my camera over. Good to see you again. So in the case where I'm spending a lot of money in the short term and I need to convince leadership to invest in that, but then I'll be able to deliver a high quality user experience quickly. But that's going to be expensive. Or maybe we want to do the really cheap, like internal prototyping. So it's an internal prototype, so we don't need to deliver the highest quality experience. We can get out this cheap and fast thing, and it's not going to be a great experience. But if we prove it out, however we're doing that in the short term, in the longer term, we can iteratively improve the experience. So those would be two ways that you can use the iron triangle to solve in the short term and in the long term. By the way, if you're doing this, you're establishing yourself as a subject matter expert in that feature set, aren't you? Because you came up with a plan and now you're going to be attached to it over multiple quarters. So you do want to think about definitely multiple months and quite possibly multiple years. You at least want to think about them at planning time. You may find that the short-term and long-term solution are very similar. And those would be cases where leadership might go ahead and bite the bullet. You may find that this is rare, but it does happen. The long-term solution is easier than the short-term solution. When this often happens, it often involves a third-party product. So someone else has already gone and done like the really cool way of doing it, and it would actually be faster to drop in their off-the-shelf product rather than to implement your own. That's generally going to be a case where it's more expensive, but you get to leap into the long-term solution right away. And so you would be thinking on the order of years because you wouldn't want to commit to a third-party product in an enterprise situation for a month or two. Generally, that would be too much turnover cost. For a side project, you might do it though. Like Supabase premium tier, not sponsored. Feel free to sponsor me if you want Supabase.
Being a feature,
you can sign up for like a couple months and then roll back off of it really easily.
And then iterating on it slowly. That's definitely better than spending an entire year developing something and then no one is using it. You'd rather put something out that has thousands of users and then slowly make it better. The biggest place amateurs fail is scale. They think that the real world is like a system design interview and that you should just throw CPUs and cores and expensive systems on a problem.
You can do that. You can do that. It's not sustainable, but you can do that. It's definitely a good short-term strategy very often.
Top 1% aren't the best coders. Strong programming fundamentals can definitely help, but it's not necessary. So if your goal is to become the top lead coder or a legendary grandmaster at Codeforces or even an international Olympiad gold medalist, well then, I'm not your guy.
I like that he's clarifying what he means by top 1% of software engineers now. He could have done this at the start, right? Because now what is he saying? Is he talking about the top 1% of engineers who are able to influence the roadmap? That's kind of what it seems like he's talking about right now. Is he talking about the top 1% in terms of highest compensation engineers? Maybe that's what he means. But he's very clear right now, he's not talking about the top 1% of actual coding ability.
I didn't even know you could earn these titles until like 5 minutes ago. The best software engineers simply build the best products in the
It would be cool to be called a grandmaster of code or something, right? That'd be pretty cool. Y'all can call me that if you want to.
Time frame that they're given. They realize that there are real world constraints and you can always improve and iterate in the future. Also, you'll always introduce tech debt. They'll always...
The Cool Toad Vlogs. Programming with John and Smurfette kissing in a tree. Who's Smurfette? I don't know who that is.
Be stuff you have to fix later, and understanding and embracing that is a superpower. Secret number 6, mentor others. Hopefully this one isn't a surprise because I'm sure the software engineers you look up to most have helped you in your own personal growth and career.
You know what? As much as I'm biased to agree with him. I love teaching other people to code. I run Laterally. We teach people to code. I'm a content creator. He's a content creator. That's probably why we share this bias. Tech content creators, we want to spread information and we want others to take that information and use it. So we want it to be actionable, and basically we're mentoring people. But if your goal is to be the highest compensated engineer, you actually don't need to mentor other people. I'll let you in on a dirty secret. You really don't need to. There are a lot of very high level principal staff, very highly compensated, influential in terms of able to direct the software engineering roadmap, impactful, who are really not mentoring anybody. So you don't actually need to do that, even though I personally enjoy it, but you really don't need to.
Career in some way. The best engineers give back and make the people around them.
He's just talking about the best engineers, it seems, and it's not really clear, like, what is he talking about? Is he just projecting his personal goals? I don't know. He hasn't been clear. The top 1% of software engineers, according to what metrics? You know what I mean? Yeah, it kind of seems like he means top 1% closest to what he wants to be, which is fine, and it seems to be a really good picture. But you as the audience should probably take into account, me, John, what are my biases? This guy, Namanh, what are his biases? And our viewpoints and our situations, and how does that differ from yours? Again, if you're trying to land your first programming role and you want to be in the top 1% of applicants, you don't need to be mentoring others. I will say, though, it would be cool. It would be weird, though. If you are applying for a junior role and someone else lists you as their mentor in code, that would be really weird, right? You probably want to reword that or rework that. If you could show that they were a satisfied paying customer, or a satisfied customer, maybe not paid. Or if they have the job, instead of having them say that you were their mentor, have them say that you were their collaborator, and they can vouch for your work ethic. So try to put yourself, this is like a chess game, right? This is like you're triangulating a complex subject here, but try to put yourself in the shoes of the hiring manager. Is the hiring manager going to buy the idea that you, this person that's never had a coding job, you are mentoring these other people that do have coding jobs? Even if it's true, it seems weird and implausible from the hiring manager perspective. Do you see what I'm saying? Something that would be more likely to work is, hey, these are my work references. They can show that I've been coding and that I do a good job. We worked on some projects together. They may have been open source. They may have been freelance. It might have been a hackathon, whatever, but we worked together and they can vouch that I'm good. So mentor others is definitely a good thing to do. That's going to be something that's more important for your personal brand at the senior level.
Better. It's what they're judged on, because if you're not making your direct team more efficient, then what are you doing? Companies...
Look, it's one thing that you can do is show that you're a mentor. There are a lot of very well compensated, very high level engineers that just don't mentor at all. Flexing your ability to mentor others will help you get to the senior level, for sure. But if you want to go staff or principal, it's actually less important. being a really great mentor is actually going to lean you into possibly into an engineering path, if you're an engineer manager path. So when you hit the senior level, there's a fork in the road, and you can go management track or continue going along the IC, eventually get up to like distinguished or whatever. Those people, you don't need to mentor others. So if your goal is to hit senior, definitely demonstrate that you're mentoring. That's gonna show that you are at least a senior. But if you're trying to go from senior to principal, staff, distinguished, you need to find an area of expertise where you're literally better than everyone else at your company or everyone in the industry. Like the inventor of Python is a distinguished engineer, right? He stepped down, but then he got hired again, didn't he? I think he's working at Microsoft right now. Guido, where are you working, buddy? Yeah, his employer's in Microsoft, occupation computer programmer. His title is not just computer programmer. I think he's distinguished or senior distinguished. Okay, he currently holds the title of distinguished engineer at Microsoft. I'm sure you could make a case that he's mentored a lot of people. But that's not the reason he's distinguished. He's distinguished because he created Python. There's no one better. Like, there's no one better. So mentoring will get you to the senior level, but focusing on mentorship to the neglect of technical expertise, you're actually not going to get beyond the senior level unless you want to go into management. If you want to get staff, principal, distinguished, you need to find a technical area where you're the best. You're the best at some level of abstraction, at least the best at your company, or maybe you're the best in your country, or maybe you're the best in, some other way of saying that you're like actually the best one. That's how you get to be distinguished. If you're like an inventor, I know plenty of I've invented libraries. This other guy, Sebastian Tiangolo. I know plenty of inventors that we don't get called distinguished, even though we invented awesome stuff a lot of people use. So I think this guy is just staff or principal. And he created Fast API. This is like a huge library. Now I'm kind of curious, what is his level? Let's see. Open source fellow, senior staff. Okay, so he was senior staff, and then some people use this term fellow, which is sometimes considered to be like a distinguished level. I think a Google fellow. Let's check out levels.fyi. Okay, so basically he might have made it now. Good for him. Yeah, Google fellow is actually over a distinguished. So Sebastian is considered a Sequoia fellow, and he was previously senior staff. Because he's the best. He's the best at Fast API, which is a major and influential library.
He's won multiple.
And he certainly will have mentored some people. It's not like he mentored 0 people. But mentoring didn't get him to that level. Does that make sense? His technical feat is way more impressive than his mentoring feats. If you were to do the equivalent on the other side, you would be more on the management track, I think.
Rockstar engineers, and some are just born that way, but the majority of them are coached into that level. By spending time pairing with and getting feedback from superstar engineers, you start emulating their habits and behaviors and good industry conventions. It's like faking it till you make it, but you're not really faking.
I really hate it when he says that. These people, dude, Guido is not faking it, homie. No, it's learning by doing. Let's say I'm Sebastian and I don't make Fast API, I make the first thing first. He made this thing called SQL Model. Before SQL Model, he made Pedantic something else. And it flopped. and you learn from your flops. Who's the creator of Node? Thank you. Ryan Dahl. He created Node.js, and then he decided that Node.js had some problems, so he went and made Dino. He made something, and then he made a better something. That doesn't mean he was faking it. It just means he improved over time. It's learning by doing. Learning by doing is something that it makes sense to brag about. You can talk about it in your interview. It's a great talking point. At your social events, you can say, hey, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried that, it was a little better. Here's the compare contrast, points A, in favor of this way, points in favor of that way, and overall I prefer this one, and that's the reason why. That's learning things. That's not faking. So please, consider in your communication, reaching for the ideas of learning by doing, gaining experience, comparing and contrasting, building in public, learning in public. All of those are good things. Don't talk about, well, I'm faking it right now. If you want a hiring manager to run away from you, mention something about how you're faking it right now. I'm just faking it till I make it. Why do you want to work here? Because, I'm tired of being fake. You're not fake. You're already a programmer if you have your portfolio. And if you don't have a portfolio, make one before you start applying.
Faking anything. You're just copying until you get there. Mentorship can come in many different forms. It could be notes on a document, or comments on a pull request, or just career advice in a casual one-on-one. But the true differentiators, that top echelon of software engineers, the top 1% of the 1%, they don't constrain their...
What? The 1% of the 1% of what?
coaching only to the company. They believe that their brand should...
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do not constrain... If you're even in the top half of engineers, do not constrain your learning to your company. Don't do that. If you constrain your learning to what your company shares, that's just a recipe for disaster and career stagnation. You're never going to get beyond the person in front of you, right? So anyway, you need to be learning outside of your company for sure.
Echo across the industry, and they do this through...
Pro tip for career advancement, applying every 6 to 18 months is optimal. 6 months earlier in your career, and then you can slow it down later in your career. One of the best ways to accelerate your career is just by interviewing. Sorry, that's the way the computer science industry is. I wish it wasn't so. I wish that you could just stay with an employer and up level. That's not the dynamics of the market today. So if you have gone through a few jobs, let's say every 6 months, and then you do this for a couple of years, you should have worked at 4 different companies. So you should be aware of practices outside of your current company. Actually, the majority of your awareness would be outside of your current company. And this is a good thing. This is a good thing.
Through blogs and conferences and interviews. Secret number 7, understand business impact. If these layoffs have taught you anything, it's that companies only care about their bottom line. Increasing the bottom line means more profit, which means more money back to shareholders. People often think that engineers should be shielded from the intricacies of making money. That's for the product and finance teams, right? Wrong. The top 1% of engineers embrace the numbers and align themselves with projects that will move
100%. And that's one of the reasons that I think that you doing personal projects is so powerful, because you get to be kind of a business. If you're getting users for your project, you need to think through the whole software development lifecycle and the marketing concerns, the whole bit. And when you have this mindset, here's how the backend works, here's how the front end works, here's how the DevOps and the deployment works, and I can deploy a project and I can get real humans to come use my thing, like Latterly.io. This is open source, y'all. This is open source. You can sign up for free, pay what you want, and then premium if you want to do $30 a month. So this is one of my projects. And it's open source. Here's the GitHub. And I assure you that building projects like this are going to align your mental model to the things that your employer cares about. It's going to align your mental model. You're going to track with them better. And as a result, you're going to be able to communicate with them better. You're going to be able to persuade them better. And you're going to be able to negotiate better to get a job, to raise your income, accelerate your career.
move the needle. The joke at Google used to always be that the fastest way to get promoted was by getting on projects that would ship and make a big impact, even if they
It's not a joke. Why was that a joke at Google? That's like the real way it is.
failed. It's the reason there have been so many messaging apps from Google. Hangouts and Meets and Allo. Part of succeeding is having people in your corner, and there's nothing that brings people together like money. Spending time understanding the money printing machines at a company and how to improve margins or create new business lines is the best way to make a splash. Secret number 8, improve culture. And last but not least, rockstar engineers improve a company in more ways than just engineering and product. They drive culture. They run hackathons and write blog posts and organize conferences, and they even make the interview process better.
I agree with all that. Here's a big one that I've advocated for is encouraging your peers to take time off. So in the industry, there's been a trend for many companies to offer a really cool benefit, which is called unlimited vacation or unlimited PTO. But if that is done naked, if that's done by itself without cultural changes, then there's actually a pressure for engineers to take less time off. And this is a huge pitfall. Unlimited vacation problem. Unlimited vacation is not as great as it sounds. You can check this out, for example, Fortune. And so the way you counterbalance this is you establish cultural norms on your team. You can say, hey, on our team, we informally agree that we want to take a minimum time off policy. You can even get leadership to formalize it if you're cool, but at least you can do it informally. And that will improve the health of your teammates. People are going to be less stressed. You're going to improve the culture and you're going to change the culture. So an informal minimum time off policy is an example of a cultural improvement. Another is, hey, how do we handle pings off hours? So there's your 9 to 5. Maybe you want to advocate for core hours. I don't know. Flexible work policy, remote. All of these are elements of culture. The interview process is a big one. But if someone DMs you over Slack, they Slack you, or you're using Microsoft Teams or whatever, and you get hit up at 7 p.m. at your time, what do you do with that? Advocate for a culture that says, hey, unless this is like a make or break, live or die situation, I can get back to this tomorrow. And that's going to be a lower stress, better, higher quality work environment. You're going to see employee stickiness, so your ICs are not going to leave. They're going to stay with the company. Retention. If you can just reduce the stress, man, you know what I mean? Just chill, man. Compared to the other situation where, I don't care if it was 7 p.m., you're salaried, and that means that you're working 24/7 or at least 24/5, and if I DM you at 7 p.m., you still need to be responsive. That's like a toxic work culture. You can see the difference, right?
Understand that the only way to scale a company is by working on its culture. Good culture is the best way to attract great talent. If you think of two of the best engineers out there, Jeff Dean and Sanjay Gemawat, they've built some insane products at Google, but their reputation is so much more than that.
Also food. I was just eating some sweet potato and this one hit me. Lunch and learns. And if you can get your managers to sign off on, hey, during this lunch and learn, anyone who attends gets like 10 or 15 or 20 bucks for like a coffee or like a little small Uber Eats or whatever. A little food goes a long way, people. Stay away from pizza though. There's kind of a negative stigma with the software engineer pizza party. But a little food goes a long way to improving culture. And that's not even a joke. Literally, like, you can look up the research. Food kicks off serotonin. If you ask for a raise right after lunch, as opposed to right before lunch, there's a statistically, scientifically discernible impact that if you ask after lunch, things are going to go better. Like, literally, people being in a good mood, that's a big part of what culture is. It's not the whole thing, but that's a big part of what culture is. And don't sleep on some food.
Mentored hundreds, if not thousands of engineers, improved culture as well as technical initiatives like code processes and testing, and they've worked on projects that have directly increased Google's market cap. I'm not a top 1% engineer. I'm nowhere close. But by emulating the behaviors of the very best software engineers, I'll eventually get there and
Thanks, Namanh. This is overall really good. He says he's not a top 1% engineer. Who is he talking about? Is he talking about Guido? Like, I don't know. But a lot of really good advice here. Reflecting overall thoughts, I think a lot of his advice is, given that you are already employed as a professional engineer, how do you accelerate to the senior staff principal level? I think he has a lot of really good advice there. If you're someone who is trying to land your first programming job, I think there's a bunch of gaps here. He doesn't get so much, as far as I can tell, into the job market or into portfolio or really into interview prep. Actually, his comment about leak code was basically the top 1% of engineers are not the top 1% of leak coders. Well, I got to tell you something. If your goal is just to pass the interview, being a top 1% leak coder is a cheat code. It's a really good thing. So if you want to optimize on the job search in particular, check out latterly.io. There's also a Discord. So I already showed you it's open source. You can sign up for free and pay what you want. There's also a Discord. Come say hi on the Discord. Kick off your social networking. It'll improve your job search results. Hope to see you soon.